Donald Trump swept into the Oval Office on Wednesday like a general unveiling a battle plan, announcing a colossal 25% tariff on every car imported into the United States, a policy thunderbolt slated to strike on April 2nd. With the swagger of a man who spent years railing against trade imbalances, he detailed the jump from a modest 2.5% rate to a towering 25%, a tenfold escalation he's betting will breathe fire into America's industrial heartland. We're starting with a little 2.5% base where we've been snoozing and now we're blasting up to a big beautiful 25%, Trump proclaimed, his voice a booming mix of pride and provocation. The tariffs, he swore, will start padding U.S. coffers by April 3rd, a deadline he sealed with a showman's grin. This is very exciting, believe me folks, it's a game changer, the best ever. For Trump, this isn't just a fiscal tweak, it's a holy war to reclaim factory floors, flood Rust Belt towns with jobs, and plant the American flag atop the global economic pyramid. He sees it as the spark for a manufacturing renaissance, a legacy move to etch his name in history as the president who turned the trade tide. The world erupted in protest, a cacophony of outrage from allied capitals. Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney leapt into the fray, his voice sharp as a blade as he branded the tariff a direct attack on his nation's workers, hardscrabble folks in places like Windsor, Oshawa and Oakville, where auto plants aren't just workplaces but lifelines stitching communities together. We will defend our people, our companies, our country, and we'll do it shoulder to shoulder, he roared, rallying a nation where the auto sector employs 500,000 and pumps billions into exports. Across the Atlantic, the European Union's Ursula von der Leyen fired her own salvo, her words slicing through the diplomatic fog. This is bad for profits, worse for pocketbooks, a disaster for all sides. From Brussels' sleek corridors where trade pacts are forged, she signaled the EU, a $500 billion U.S. trade partner, was ready to push back. German car giants like BMW, Mercedes and Volkswagen, whose gleaming models roll from Bavarian factories to U.S. showrooms, huddled to tally the damage. Trump, a brawler honed by decades in boardrooms and campaign trails, didn't flinch. He stormed Truth Social, his digital war chest, and lobbed a Molotov cocktail. If Canada and the EU dared do economic harm to the USA, he'd unleash large-scale tariffs far larger than currently planned. With a flourish, he painted the US as their underappreciated savior, the best friend those two countries have ever had, and dared them to step into the ring. Insiders say he crafted the post over late-night Diet Cokes at Mar-a-Lago, pacing its gilded halls, convinced this trade showdown could be his defining triumph. It was Trump at his rawest, a blend of bravado, menace and a pitchman's zeal, doubling down on a vision where tariffs are the ultimate weapon. The shockwaves raced across the Pacific, rattling Asia's economic titans. Japan's Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba, a chess master and a judo GI, kept his tone measured but edged with steel, hinting at appropriate measures with all options on the table. Japan's auto industry, a $142 billion behemoth employing 1 in 10 workers and driving a third of its U.S. exports, braced for a tsunami. Toyota, the world's top carmaker, watched shares plummet 3.7% in Tokyo's frenetic trading, while Nissan and Honda shed 3.2% and 3.1%. Masanori Katayama of the Japan Automobile Manufacturers Association had warned days earlier that a 25% tariff would hurt both U.S. and Japanese economies overall, a cry rooted in the 1.5 million cars Japan ships stateside annually. Tokyo's diplomats, in hushed talks over sake and steak, pleaded for exemptions on steel, autos, even semiconductors, gestures of goodwill from trade summits past, but Washington's response was a cold shoulder. South Korea, a scrappy powerhouse, felt the ground buckle beneath its auto sector, a national jewel. Industry Minister On Duk-gun summoned execs to an emergency war room Thursday, racing to forge an April counterplan as Hyundai Motor and Kia, the world's third-largest auto duo, saw shares dive over 3%. Considerable difficulties are barreling toward us, On warned, his team sketching tax breaks, export pivots to China, and subsidies to cushion the blow. India's Tata Motors cratered 5%, Tesla supplier Sona Comstar dropped 4%, and Mexico's sprawling plants, churning out pickups for Detroit, faced a chokehold. Germany's luxury Marquez, White House official will Scharf's $100 billion revenue boast, and whispers of retaliatory tariffs from Seoul to Berlin only thickened the global fog. Trump's been dangling this carrot since February, when he first mused about a 25% car tariff in a throwaway line at a rally, offering no meaty details. By Monday he'd honed the pitch, teasing it was very near during a Fox News hit, his eyes glinting with mischief. April 2nd, Liberation Day, he's christened it, looms as the grand unveiling with reciprocal tariffs targeting nations he accuses of bilking America. It's a grudge he's nursed since his 2016 campaign, thundering from podiums that the U.S. is a global doormat, hemorrhaging wealth to crafty partners. Yet his tariff threats have a checkered past, delayed by skittish aides, watered down by Wall Street's pleas, leaving allies and markets in a perpetual spin cycle. This time he's all in even as investors recoil, equity futures slipped, automaker stocks bled, and economists like Patrick Anderson warned of a $12,000 car price spike if Canada and Mexico get hammered. At home the air's thick with dread. A Harris poll for The Guardian bared the angst. 90% of Democrats, 69% of independents and 57% of Republicans fretting over shrinking bank accounts. Candice Lang of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce called it a generational gut punch, a tax hike that could cede North America's auto crown to Asia or Europe. Elon Musk, despite Trump's breezy net neutral claim, took to X with a rare dissent. Tesla's still hurting, don't kid yourselves. Trump fired back on Truth Social, we will win everything, bigly. Insisting the cash is already flooding in. Detroit auto workers sipping beers in dive bars swap tales of hope and fear. More jobs, sure, but at what cost? The world holds its breath for April 2nd, torn between Trump's triumph and a trade war inferno.